Hello, all, the Irrational Skeptic here, and today I am going to be doing another MBTI video, and I'm going to be comparing two types once more. The types I will be comparing are the ESTJ and the ESTP. So, getting right into it, I like to go through the functions of the ESTJ, and then I will go over the functions of the ESTP. The ESTJ leads with extroverted thinking as a dominant function. Then they have introverted sensing as an auxiliary function, extroverted intuition as a tertiary function, and introverted feeling as their inferior function. The ESTP, on the other hand, leads with SE, extroverted sensing, as their dominant function, TI, introverted thinking, as their auxiliary function, FE, extroverted feeling, as their tertiary function, and NI, introverted intuition, as their inferior function. So, how do these types appear in real life? How are they similar to each other? How are they different? And do they even have any points of intersection? We are going to be looking at this throughout this video. So, the ESTJ, if I would give a brief overview, are the people you find in charge of organizations. Your manager is probably an ESTJ, your project lead, your commander in an army, your supervisor. They have usually are involved in roles that require a lot of organization. Because they have extrovert thinking as a dominant function, they are not focused on the feeling aspect of getting the job done. When they are not necessarily cold monsters, but at the same time, they are. So, I'm sorry, but I'm being funny, but at the same time, the way they operate requires them to discount personal feelings in something. So if they tell you to do a job, they are not expecting you to say you don't want to do it because you don't feel like doing it, or you have a feeling that you shouldn't do it. You need to give them practical reasons for why you don't want to do a job. Is it inefficient? Do you have a more efficient way to get the job done? Um, you have to be more straightforward about it and more methodic about when you're talking to them, because they're always parsing what people say for the most actionable uh, things in your words. So if someone that's a little bit more emotional is talking to them, they're literally just hearing a lot of words flying around. And when they hear you say, and then I'm going to go see him, let's say, for example, you're telling them about a guy that you like. And you're going on, oh, and he makes me feel so weird sometimes. And sometimes, you know, it's just like I get this weird vibe from him. And like the other day when we were sitting together, he just started, talking about his ex-girlfriend. And so I hope that's I was giving an impression of a girl talking about her boy problems. But what I'm trying to point out there is that an ESTJ, in that whole spiel that a friend is giving, they're picking out things like jealousy, whining, you know, maybe they're incompatible. It's just because it's either this or that. It's not, you know, even though there's a lot of feelings that one person may have individual to any situation, the ESTJ is interested in the outcomes. So, you know, the feely aspect of it is personal to you. It is something that's going on inside of you, and although it does impact the outcome, the only things that they can see, the ESTJ can see, is what you do, not what goes on inside of you. So those, whatever those myriad of emotions are, they all add up to you doing something in the real world, which is what they are now interested in. So, yeah, that's how I can explain extroverted thinking dominant in the best way possible. And then you have introverted sensing auxiliary. So because they have introverted sensing as an auxiliary function, it's going to be easy for them to be very detailed. They are going to be able to recall information more accurately, and they are going to want to be more precise when they're recollecting and when they're making claims. They're going to be probably one of the most least likely types to pull out something from their, excuse my French, derriere. They're going to be the least likely type to do that. So, and this is because they want to be, I don't want to use the word honest, because that's more of a value. But at the same time, they are introverted feeling types as well. They have that in their conscious stack. But their their straightforwardness and their, saying when they don't know something has more to do with a type of pride, or in their ego. It's in their extroverted thinking. If they don't know something, it's better for them to tell you that they do not know. One, so that you don't ask them more about this thing that they don't know, and they just keep digging themselves into a deeper hole where they can look bad. And so it's at the beginning, if I say I don't know, then we can find out together, or maybe you can teach me something. And if you're able to teach me something, most likely, most ESTJs will go confirm and verify. So they'll go look for this information on their own. And if it matches what you said, maybe they can start listing you as a credible source for some type of information. They can put you in a box that, oh, okay, Jackson is good for history. Bob is good for math, and Stacy is good for physics or chemistry, you know? And yeah, so that's what their extrovert thinking, introvert sensing is doing. That's working hand in hand. And so it's like magic when you see them moving about the world, arranging everything. And it's so easy. Ask any intuitive type, especially the INPs and INJs as well. They're probably going to be like, wow, I don't know where these people get all that energy from, and how they're able to easily push all these people around without feeling a little bit uncomfortable. But they don't. The ESTJ might complain a little bit about the situation, but just as a normal person would complain about anything in passing. It's not something that is hindering them. Whereas maybe in an intuitive type, it is actually a hindrance. So yeah, um, and moving on, their tertiary function is extroverted intuition. And your tertiary function, in most cases, is usually the function that you kind of aspire towards. It's the function that is easier for you to lean on and still remain in your preferred mode of version. And when I'm saying version here, I'm meaning introversion or extroversion. So uh, because you're an extroverted thinker, the opposing pole is going to be introverted feeling. But even on the pole of feeling, if you were to remain extroverted, you'd have to go all the way down to your unconscious cognitive stack and go to your last function. That's where you have extroverted feeling at. So it's not so practicable to try going there. The next best function to go to and still remain extroverted is to go to extrovert intuition. So they will be a bit on the creative side as well. But the way their extroverted intuition works would be a little bit more in service towards the uh, extroverted thinking because that's the boss. That's, extroverted, the dominant function is the boss. Your auxiliary function is the boss's right hand man, and your tertiary function is the know it all kid. So the extroverted intuition would probably allow them to come up with uh, a different scenario on the spot. But if you listen to them, it'll always, even if they come up with a different scenario, you'll always hear the tinge of it being so practical. They're going to start weeding out the impractical bits of their random intuition. They're not going to want to stay in fairyland too long. Yeah, that's a jab at you, ENFPs. But yeah, moving on to their inferior function, introverted feeling. This is why you see them not showing so much emotion, even though introverted feeling, anyways, is not as an expressive function. But when I say showing emotion, is showing their own emotion towards things. So it's a lot easier for them to be cold, to be dispassionate when talking. They're going to execute the law and execute the project swiftly and with a sharp blade, like a ninja that just comes and destroys the enemy with one swoop of the sword. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but yeah, that's how they uh, view themselves in a sense. I'm not saying, every type views themselves as their hero function. I'm borrowing this term from Dr. Beebe, his archetypes. He calls the dominant function the hero. So their hero is extrovert thinking, and their anima is introverted feeling. And this is akin to a kid. It's akin to a small child that is just roaming around, has no self awareness. So this means that when they are acting on something that's maybe a conviction for them or something they deeply value, whatever that connection is, because it's going to be different for everybody. So maybe one person really cares about their mother, and anything that has to do with their mother, they will literally just blow up in emotion. They'll get mad if anything affects them. They'll be very concerned if someone tries to talk bad about them, and so on and so on. And yeah, those are the four functions for their cognitive stack and how you can recognize an ESTJ. And comparing to the ESTP, who has extroverted sensing as a dominant function. This makes them very, very impulsive. They act first, think later. They're the people that are going to save the day in the moment because the INTP or INFJ were busy thinking of the best way to solve the bridge that was about to fall on their heads. While the ESTP grabs them both and jumps and swiftly dives into the water and swims them to safety before they could wrap their heads around the speed of the falling bridge and the angle which it might fall at and how they might escape in their imagination. So yeah, we know how that ends if we were to follow the whims of these slower acting types for that with extroverted sensing. Extroverted sensing is a function that allows you to make very quick calculations of what is going on. And I mean, this is a part where I will have to qualify that everyone, I've said this in previous videos, but everyone sees some functions as smart and others as not. Some people say introverted thinking is smart and then extroverted sensing is just animalistic. No, no, it's not. The functions or the types are, are, are cognitive patterns. So it is your brain power can be still great and you can be an ESTP or an ESFP and you could have very high brain power. And this, is more calculated in raw terms of by something like the IQ tests, but I've mentioned in other places that I see them as the tests as being a little bit inaccurate because they should be measuring that exact abstract raw power. When the ESTP is assembling a makeshift bridge in a very short time so that people can get across, it's not that they're not being intelligent. They are being very intelligent. The one that will do it faster is being probably has a higher output than the ones that don't do it as fast. So even between ESTPs, you can, have variations and levels. But yeah, all I'm trying to say is that this is it's a very visceral process of the mind for SE. So it takes in the very concrete information and responds to the environment in the most quick and effective manner. And ESTPs should never be underestimated, I always say, because they have introverted thinking as an auxiliary function. So when you pair a function that's all about raw power and raw action in the moment, you are now helped by a very calm and deliberative function, which is introverted thinking. You end up getting someone that most of the time, if they really master um, their way of being, you find that most of the time they whatever they're doing, they're getting it right. They're getting it correct. And it may be hard to believe. You might say, "Oh, they're just using force." No, this is their force of will, but not just wild force of will, because that would just be random action and no pointed direction. This is force of will mixed with introverted thinking, which is quickly choosing the best and quickest route for them. They are doing the thing which makes most logical sense. Um, so, And I'm sorry, I'm not giving, I guess I haven't given you a concrete example of this, but I will give an example from my own life, I suppose, with a friend. He was an ESTP, and we were we were driving down the road, and he was speeding, and then he got stopped by the police. The policeman comes to the window and starts talking to him, and he was going pretty fast. I was pretty sure he was going to get a ticket. But very quickly, he was able to calm this man down. The man was a little bit angry when he first started talking to him and asked for his license and everything. And he got into some conversation with them. He saw at that time he saw his he saw that in his on his keychain he had uh, a Batman sim, uh, he had a Batman on his keychain, and he asks him about it. He says, "Oh, you like Batman?" And the police officer did kind of, look a little bit mad still, but on his continuous persistence in, kind of lingering and catching on to some cues that the police officer was giving him, he was able to maneuver into a conversation talking about the police officer's daughter, and not in a bad way, talking about the daughter. And he talked about my ESTP friend talked about his daughter, and they somehow just started relating to one another. And long story short, he didn't get a ticket. He he wrote down that he stopped him for one of his tail lights were busted, and he told him to get it fixed. So and at first glance, you might think, oh, okay, so he's just a smooth talker. No, this is not something that people can easily do. Yes, some people just get lucky, but this, he was consciously searching for this information. He was consciously making sure he was hitting the right buttons and changing direction when he saw he had an error, but he was mostly on point, on target. So this is the point I'm trying to make with this is it's not that they're impulsive and they're just barbarians, even though they are. You see, I do that because it's in a sense you can call them this, but in another sense you have to be more honest about the facts and more honest about what functions are, what a type is. Um, and of course, there's different explanations, there's different interpretations by Jung, and then we have interpretations by people like Dr. Beebe, I was talking about earlier. We have interpretations by Kiersey, Kiersey. We have interpretations by Dario Nardi. So there's just so many different views at looking at it. Though if you go through all their materials, like I've gone through most of the people I've mentioned, I've gone through the material. The common trend is there, the common theme is there, and when they all speak about these functions, even no matter how mystical you might think they're getting, if you're able to wrap your mind around it, then you get these types of explanations that I'm giving for the functions and how they act. So, yeah, enough about that. Let's go down to their tertiary function. Their tertiary function is extroverted feeling. So, and remember back when I told you that the tertiary function is kind of a function you aspire to be? Yeah, this is what it is for the ESTP. But so it's easier for them to remain an extroverted sensor and be an extroverted feeler at the same time. What is the super advantage of this? It's that they're able to effectively lead people, and they're able to effectively negotiate. with others. Um, FE is a function dealing with harmonizing. So they will be able to get people on the same page with them quickly. And then they have extrovert sensing, so they will be able to take the most actionable steps to get the product that they want. You know, you have to look at the whole you have to look at the whole theory of functions as input, some calculations, and output. And the output can also be another input. So in this way, you can see how it gets more complicated. It's not as easy as they see something, they think about it, then do it. No, they can see something, think about it, do something, and then that something they're doing is now an input for the next thing that they're going to do. So it's a constantly updating process, and it's very, very fast, incredibly quick. But yeah, it's incredibly quick. It's not a conscious thing. You're not doing it by thinking about it. It's how the functions are functioning within you. So yeah, this is FE. They're going to be good at that. Um, and then finally, they have as an inferior function introverted intuition. So what this ends up being is that they don't have very good awareness of the consequences of their actions in the longer term. And so they can get very quick returns. And I mean, it can be very good for them in one sense, in that they can get good returns in the moment and accumulate because they're not the worst at accumulation of, let's say, of money. But also they will probably end up spending a lot as well. So they make money fast, they spend money fast. Um, so, I mean, they could survive in this way. They could just keep making more money and knowing that they can make more and spend. But foresight allows you to say, oh, I'm going to be, 60 one day, and I'm not going to have as much energy to continue working in the way that I do, making more, and I might not have the same contacts. And what if the world changes? And there's a lot of contingencies that you would think they do because they have TI as an auxiliary function, but it's geared towards the moment. It's geared towards the present. And introvert intuition, NI, is geared towards the future. So, they're going to have trouble in that sense. They're going to have trouble making sure that the future turns out the way they want it to. And even if it doesn't turn out the way they want it to, they're still going to have problems seeing how that future will appear. So yeah, that's why you see a lot of times ESTPs, you see them as acting rash. You say, oh wow, you're making such rash decisions. So, or yeah. But anyways, I think I'm going to slow down and end here because this video has gotten very long. But I hope that few ESTJs, ESTPs that are out there interested in the MBTI are able to get something out of this, or if you're just someone that likes watching MBTI videos, I hope you get something out of this. I've done a comparison of the types. They are in some ways similar. They are both quite practical minded. They are both thinking types, so they use more rational approach to the world, and they're both low in an aspect of feeling. Uh, they both don't base their decisions mostly on the a personal values or so. But yeah, let's leave it there. I'll see you all next time. The Irrational Skeptic signing off.